takes too much bandwidth to make videos, so I just make it live to upload. But I had a salient thought right now. I actually had a salient thought I wanted to upload. I was at another restaurant near where I live. They always have great service there, but something can always be too good to be true. So right there next to the register, they just got for no damn reason they got like a silver tin with ice in it, and they just got a whole bunch of beers right there. I don't know what today's. I think today's Thursday. I don't know if today's a holiday, but they just got a bunch of liquor right there. They got bottles of wine. Now, if you know anything about, there's one liquor is not the same as this is a video about liquor. Just for the sake of it, all liquors are not created equal. To have this many umpteen different culprits of killers of like, if you were to put all alcohol and organize it, a lot of things are not very difficult, but it's not organized. Like I went to a school for bartending, and it wasn't. It's like his school been around for 60 damn near years. The person teaching there been teaching there 40 years, and he doesn't know simple things about his own school. But they did have enough good sense to break down all the liquors. So you have vodka, you have gin, you have you have like different countries like that have endemic beers there. You have ale. Ale's probably, I'd say ale's probably the strongest. The intoxication you get off of a combination of like fermenting like different yeast and malts with liquor. It's a different experience, but it's also more detrimental. So the most deadly thing you could probably consume would be like malt liquor. According to Dr. Umar Johnson, you can destroy yourself in 6 months. Would it take the other beers 6 years to do? But for knocking somebody clean out of here quick, if I had to guess, whatever liquor had overdosed to most people, it'd be white wine because white wine is just very potent. I don't know if this is healthy. I know red wine's healthy. I used to ostensibly drink it because it's healthy. But white wine is just simply a killer. But they had the white wine right there next to the register, a whole bunch of liquor. But the deeper thing is that you could also appreciate that as bait. Is that here's a nice place with great service, but also there's some bait. I've never even at a liquor store, I've never seen cold liquor just sitting there for no damn reason in front of anyone that would patronize someone. Even clerks have a little people. That's kind of like a newbie. If you're an upstart to doing something, you're over the top with it. But the old killers, like the old liquor stores, they're not going to do something that egregious. They're a little bit more dialed in. But a deeper way you could understand that is as company. So that liquor is like company. I was actually gonna say something reckless to be funny then, but I'm learning better to. It's actually it's a skill to hold your peace. It says in the Bible, who, many are strong, but who's so strong to hold their tongue? That is who practices holding their tongue. So if you've been through enough trauma, you likely have triggers. Everyone has triggers, but the closer they say, like in any vicinity you go to, there's a natural pecking order there, and whoever's at the bottom of it gets it the worst. So people on the streets have the worst of triggers. So it's very easy to be triggered, but not only triggered verbally, but you can be triggered in your decisions. So this many people. So what the hell are people going to school for this much? They're going to school to find better and better to recognize triggers, monopolize triggers, but also afflict people with triggers. And if you look at some of the things that proliferate, even I've been on YouTube long enough. I've never been one to complain about the platform because I appreciate the platform. But if you look at some of the advertising and the messaging of it, I don't know how I would be designated and slated for some of the advertising that's leveled against me. Even as a damn, I'm a content creator, right? I'm pushing for 1,000 damn near videos. I was in the mall yesterday making more and more shorts, and it couldn't upload him when I got. I'm down here to 1,000 videos. The only reason I reference that is because I haven't got a red cent from it. I didn't ostensibly begin for a red cent from it. But I'm not even entitled to so much as a to patronize the chat because they have like different like they have different paid tier subscription for platforms, and that's what you need because these advertising, they're damn near, it's actually damn near, it's weaponized. It's not weapon. To say weapon would be an understatement if you understand what it's doing to your future and your health. But as 1,000 videos, I'm not even entitled to just skate without to just get a basic entry tier. What is it? Is 1,000 videos worth $7.99 now? I don't know how many views are on here, but is it worth $7.99 now? Not so for you. But the only thing I'm saying is that it's triggers, and so you can practice holding your peace. And each time you hold your peace, you're blessed. Even a joke, even if you have an idea for a joke, I think if you hold it to yourself, it'll be funnier when it comes out naturally. And it's always pays to hold your peace, but anything takes practice. That's one thing I learned. I've actually met many of my extras. I would say one thing I could flex is I probably know of more accessible maestros, um, both like online and in real life, especially where I'm from, because I'm from a very highly erudite area. The one of the cultural strengths of the area, all areas have cultural strengths and deficits and in different families. According to Tashik Bey, the concept of race is an older iteration on social engineering and programming and a caste system, and is arbitrary from the actual human reality. But ethnicity, as human families goes, is something of a reality. Is probably deeper than the word reality, but there are deficits, I mean, proclivities, for lack of a better word, proclivities. That's called a sansara. So this life itself is called sansara. That is, it's different intermingling poison. All things have a dark and a light, and if life is sustenance, at essence, it has deficits as poison. So life can be unappreciated, according to Arthur Avalon, as a seething cauldron of competing forces, but it's mitigated and enjoyed and suffered. It's all, even enjoyment is a form of suffering. It's all suffered upon and mitigated upon. Poison is samsara. Another way to explain that is a family. Is a family is simply poison. Life is family. Family is poison, but it's a poison that works. But it's a big. So you say matrix. What is a matrix? A matrix is like a womb, but more so like a nursery. A child doesn't know the difference between its mother, its womb, its family, its nursery, and life. They're all the same. The school bus, the classroom, it's all the womb of life to a child, but also to an adult for effect. So we're in a matrix. A lot of people will be proud of the matrix and are paying for better advantage in a system that is not a respecter of persons and it's not a respecter of station either. So any advantage is actually is insufferable to the actual system of advantage itself. And it's only a temporary position to further the interest of a great advantage until that station will no longer be needed. So all people and things are completely disposable and intended and are trained to understand themselves as disposable. Um, as though that were a flex, but it's still family. So it's a big fighting family for attention. That's what life is. That's what Matrix is, and that's sincera to the older Eastern thought. But within that, you have something called sanskara. A sanskara is your it's a mark that's been left on your consciousness. According to the East, we've existed in different, even in a strictly literal sense, we've been existed in other iterations in terms of our ancestors. But for say a person, a being is born as a tiger. That tiger, you would say instinct, but instinct is actually a bastardization and amalgamation, adulteration of something finer that's called a sanskar. It's an imprint. And that imprint is on one's conscience and it's within that of a fetus. According to India, when a child is born, it's traumatic. There's nothing more blessed than the experience of a child's mother, both in and outside the womb. And the matrix is still our mother. But the sensation of being born is highly traumatic, and it's the first trauma. All things start somewhere, and it's the beginning of life and trauma and suffering. But it's also beautiful and brilliant. But in that process, a child is stripped of some of its, some of its innate appreciation. Say, so what do babies lack? They say babies lack. What would a baby laugh about? What would a baby? They say babies cry in the womb, babies tear in the womb. What would a baby have to think about and profound and be aware of in the womb with a different sense of to be suspended like that? Because life, you can, according to there's a video. One of my favorite songs by Nas. It's kind of funny because Nas is considered one of the greatest hip hop artists of all time, but he's also appreciated as not being very translatable to club music. I heard someone say that. Imagine bumping Nas in the club. I would bump Nas and dance to Nas in the club, but he's very deep and he's not. He one thing you could say. What is something great? Something great is transcendent. So a great artist can transcend genres and demographics, such as Nas. I bet that I used to listen to Nas before football practice, before I killed in football practice, and my dad would let me out of it. But Nas, I think almost anyone of any station can appreciate Nas. And in one of his songs, he said he talked to a wise man. He had a couple of deep lines. He said, "Hey man, he's 30 years old playing video games at his mama's house. He never grew up. I guess he's in his second childhood. Yeah, damn near. It take up damn near about two childhoods about as sophisticated as life is. They say the more sophisticated a society, the longer it takes to rear children, and you have different approaches to raising children. At least three. So you have, and also to leadership. You have a authoritarian style. You have a laissez-faire style, and you have an indifferent style, and it's the same with parenting and iterations of society. So it's said that in a natural context, indigenous to the earth and the strains of the earth, is that like the environment is random, opportunities are random, dangers are random, but also they can be fleeting. Even danger can be fleeting. Very dangerous things can also be fleeting, and so can opportunity. And in that iteration, one of the prevailing approaches to rearing children in there is called it's an R approach, R selection. So it's numbers over quality, but it's also a more of a logic fair, but it's not a weaker form of raising. It's not less of investment or love, but it's a different iteration for a different circumstance based on the environment. But specifically, we live in we have Western hegemony, so that the cultural value, taste, and strengths of the Western mode, which is a function, I think, of feudalism, of feudal living in Europe, that was reined in by the and a lot of that now. It's more what's called case selected because that's endemic of regions such as Europe, where you had brutal winters, and it required a certain it required different investment in the children, offspring, more of attention. So sometimes if you see children being raised by parents who are thoroughly westernized at heart, they spend more time explaining things to children. I picked that up from Dr. Umar Johnson. Hey, look, oh, honey, this is how we're gonna fold this, and then we're gonna put this right here, honey. And see that? Oh, that's the clerk right there. She probably gets paid very well like that. She probably works very hard right there, honey. Let's go, honey. Put it to say bye to the clerk, honey. Let's go. It's explaining things like that. That's endemic to Europe and also Asia, and also there's some values around education that reflect that. So now I'm in the Twin Cities, and I've said Minnesota, and it's a very it's a European culture, but there's different European cultures. So America, by and large, is Anglo-Saxon culture, but and it's also not a respecter of cultures, and it doesn't even respect itself in Anglo-Saxon culture itself. Um, but it's the consensus that matters, the status quo that matters more than any cultural value or pretensions. Um, but but in where I'm at, it's still European culture, but it's more so of I think you would say like Scandinavian culture a lot, and so America excels at education by and large, but this area particularly has a lot of education. And I a little bit digress, but I had met these maestros, and one of the greatest of my teachers said that you can do anything, but it's just a matter of incremental advancement. So if you wanted to be more skillful in holding your peace, that's also practice. So you can practice holding your peace. But with the parenting styles and also leadership styles, you have the indifferent, the authoritarian, and the high level of investment. The indifferent form would be R. The high level is called K, and you can look that up on Wikipedia. It's non-K selection, and those approaches they bear out statistically in how somebody would fare, and also how a society would fare. And one's not greater than the other. They excel at different environments. Um, but but with the liquor, it's like it's kind of like friend. You could understand. So I held my peace with that stupid joke, but it actually had a salient thought about it. Is that the liquor? If you see those culprits right there, those killers right there, when you pick up a bottle, it's kind of like it's just like friends in school. So a lot of your personalities from friends in school, but you imagine you had some friends in school, like in high school, late middle school or high school. Now you look like a nerd, but that's where like I listen to people that you break down some of these heinous things that happen, these tragedies that have proliferated of like victimizing people. Um, you have so you sometimes you have different versions of it. You have you have something heinous like I've seen it's actually kind of brilliant. I watched a video. This officer, he was somewhere I think in Texas, so he's talking to a beautiful woman. This woman's with an infant. It takes a lot of a man to be friendly to a woman with her having an infant right there. To be enough of a man to be polite, bantering, endearing to a woman who is yet bearing an infant. That takes complete good faith to interface like that. This officer was doing that. Then an actual active shooter broke out while he was doing that. He goes from being endearing towards a woman and her infant to appreciating, recognizing, engaging, and neutralizing an active shooter who was actually armed to the hilt and had armament to the hilt. This actual just regular probably rank and file beat walking beating cop did that. But the greater tragedy is that that would happen. I think that had been the first intents and purposes a child because your mind's still developing your whole life, but young men are actually still a lot of child in their heart, in that they may not appreciate their own mortality or they may be emotional, but they're also formidable. So you call that a lad? Actually, that's a lad. But it's a tragedy. The greater tragedy. I've thought about this sometimes. Like I've been a school bus driver. I am a school bus driver as a vocation, and I have excelled at that. But you have to respect. You have to have an appreciation for children to do that job well. But if you're truly professional, you recognize that all people on the bus and around the bus are in fact children. The pedestrians, the other people at the base. Because if you can be the boss of the base, but if you're walking in front of a bus, you're essentially a child in front of a bus. But also, there's a child within you. That to you, the driver, is a child too, and you have to respect all children, even the child in you. So if it's not safe for you, even operating the bus, it's not safe for that child too. Um, but uh, um, but some of these, like when these active shooters happen, this person, this man, Tony Gaskins, he talks a lot about relationships, and he talks about not playing with people's heart and also respecting what a man is. He said, "Look at this right here. You would never think that somebody that looks like this would have that in them to do something like that. That's what a man is. That's why you may not play with a man because they wouldn't look like a man until it showed you what a man can do." But with these tragedies like that, um the other tragedy that you don't see is the actual culprit themselves. You don't sometimes see an assailant as a victim, and that would be an example. There is that person who perpetrated that, he was victimized by his own perpetrating, and that he lost his opportunity to live, and that would have been as equally being assailed by a firearm is as horrible whether you're bearing one or not. But the thing I want to say is that you don't know what's in someone. So if you're in middle school, high school, and you see someone, they don't know what's in you, but you don't also know what's in you. So you see some company that may not be worth keeping, right? Like beer, right? Like white wine, right? Or like somebody that is ostensibly operating like beer and white wine. They accost you, you accost them, you know better than to say something, but you said something and you surprised both of you because you didn't know you had it in you, that there's actually something in you reciprocal with that way of thinking, even though you haven't known yourself. Sometimes things, according to Osho, they're more potent if they haven't been used. So a man can be more feminine than a woman because he doesn't normally entertain that part of himself. A woman can be more formidable and is formidable, even up to including times of war in her heart, because that actual warring they say, according to Carl Jung, a man is consciously masculine, subconsciously feminine. A woman is, and I'm not saying anatomically, but it's a psyche goes. A male psyche is consciously masculine, subconsciously psyche, feminine, and the subconscious part of you is the greater part of you. It may actually be why daughters are a lot of time have a certain. You can't explain the actual relationship between a daughter and her father. Sometimes I'll be like, I go to a lot of cafes. You have different kind of bars according to bartenders. You have like a dive bar, you have a college bar, you have a well-to-do bar, but you also have different kinds of venues like cafes. So sometimes when I'm around cafes, I'll be around for what all I could know could be children or young girls, and sometimes they'll reference their dad just for no reason. A lot of times, whatever you would mention, um, whatever you mention at more than once, it means something to you, and it's coming out of you, whether it's prudent or not. And a lot of girls will talk about their dad, but I think the reason for that is actually because it may be the closest thing actually to a mother that a girl has experienced, because women have wiles. Women are not perfect, and sometimes it takes a woman to see a woman, so a daughter can actually see her mother in some of the things she does around that daughter and her father and herself that are less than that of a woman. But sometimes a man can have an actual, that might be something of the bond between a daughter and her father, I figure. But a male psyche is consciously masculine, subconsciously feminine, and a female psyche is consciously feminine and subconsciously masculine, according to Carl Jung, and some of his ideas about the psyche and the, the symbolism and the deeper solemn principles of what it means to be a broader life that we are a part of. Um, but so that too, a nerd or a pushover or just a self-respecting person that minds their business, or maybe even not a just any person that wouldn't understand themselves as getting off with people that are already rolling the dice at a young age. They may actually have chemistry with someone, like you would have, the same way you'd have chemistry with your first beer. You picked up a beer, you don't know nothing about beer, it's kind of nasty, but you got your first buzz, you got some form of chemistry with it. But the thing I wanted to point that the deeper thing is that one of my favorite actors is Alec Baldwin. I really like Alec Baldwin. I never actually followed him. He had his comedy. He did his comedy thing a lot, and like on SNL a lot. He was like recurring. He was almost a cast member. How much he appeared on SNL. But before that, he did some very great drama. He did a film called The Juror with Demi Moore. It's my favorite movies. I regurgitate them. There's a word for that in India for regurgitating the same influence or media, and I've done so with certain films like Casino with Robert De Niro, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon with Chow Yun Fat, Menace to Society with Lawrence Tate, and there was a movie about Buffalo soldiers in Italy in World War II by Spike Lee. I went over that a lot. It's actually about waking up a sleeping giant. I would like to talk about that if I get more inspiration for that. But then I've also went over this film, The Juror, a lot with Robert with Alec Baldwin and Demi Moore. My actual favorite scene in that, I would watch that movie only for one scene because I like the banter between him and her in a cafe. At that time, he's like a bull. He's a bull of the mafia, and he was commissioned to assassinate a wise guy, but he was heinous and reckless, and he let his business traumatize a child, and he victimized a child in there. And he's covering that his boss is in trouble because he did the regular mob business as life itself is mob business, but he affronted a child, which is not part of life and the mob business. And so in him concealing that for his for his um for his I'm not sure what you call it, mob boss. This is in the '90s. This film, but in him, he's doing. It's a movie about jury tampering. The Juror is about jury tampering, but they picked the wrong one. They picked an artist, a formidable woman, a single mother, and also an artist. It may not actually be more formidable and also more of guile in this life than such a figure. But the actual banter, the chemistry between them in that cafe, when she's not actually she's not actually run over by him at any point, but he's actually just so much of a handsome devil that she's spending time with him, knowing better against her instinct. She's just spending time with him. But the thing that I liked about him in there is that he's when something is completely congruent, it's true, whether good or bad. So he's a completely congruent monster. He's a complete absolute monster. But there's something of freedom in their exchange. But the reason I reference that is because whatever you say out your mouth and do out your mouth, your voice, whether verbal or not, it means something in this life, in this world, whether it's on film or not, and maybe more so for film. So there's a couple actors that I've seen do some actual heinous acting. Now, it was brilliant acting, but it's a heinous role and heinous dialogue in there, and then their actual life bear that out. So like in that movie with The Juror, there's one scene in there where he's following her to South America because she has a contact in South America who's a righteous herbalist and natural doctor who benefits the people in South America at no charge. Can you think of something more that had to be more righteous than Jesus? And then he loves her, and she's affronting him while he loves her. This love interest of Demi Moore, and he still does right by her. If you as so, all things have a balance. So you have a complete monster and you have a complete rock star like that. But as she saved the money that he fronted her, as a pretext to accost her and went into her life to tamper with her. She saved that, and anything you, that's another deeper principle, is that anything you save will save you. So like, there's another brilliant movie that I've regurgitated called Fresh. It's about a young boy learning chess moves from his father Samuel Jackson in the street, and he saves all that money, and it saves his life the same way. But when she sends for her son to go to South America, he follows her to South America, and as soon as he gets there, he commissions a taxi in order to steal the taxi. But I think she went by way of airplane, so she beat him to sail her family. But when he did so, the driver made a pass at him. He was a homosexual in South America at that time in the 90s, is what his nonverbal communication betrayed. And Alec Baldwin was so cold blooded in that he didn't bat an eye at the pass, at the gestures that he made, in that he seemed to acquiesce to the gesture, the homosexual gesture, and then he assailed him heartlessly like that, just to dispatch with him like that. That act, the heinousness of that. Then Alec Baldwin himself had some heinous things happen in his life, where I think the same way that Bruce Lee lost his son, Alec Baldwin actually assassinated a woman in acting in New Mexico, no less, where I'm from, and I discovered that movie at my friend's house in New Mexico. And you saw Alec Baldwin completely humbled by that and cry publicly like that. After all his favors and all of his success, he was humbled by that. And I just want to say that that might be an example of that. Anything we do in life, even on the screen, it comes back to us. And the same thing happened with Bruce Willis too. Bruce Willis was in another movie where he too was an assassin, and he made a relationship with a gay man in order to gain standing in what that gay man's resources were, and he dispatched him the same way, that same look of that same trope. And then Bruce Willis himself was also humbled with his health. And so these people that do some of these really strong messages like that on the screen can be humble like that. But the reason I bring up that movie, The Juror, is because there's a random scene in there that's equally heinous, but it's part of the about alcohol. Is that they were at also like a venue in the daytime in that film, because it's the exact part where he's showing Demi Moore his heart. He's scaring her with his heart, and so he had a friend that was keeping up with him, and he was aware of how he was stalking Demi Moore, and he's this sketchy figure in someone's life. This friend of his could see that in his home that had pictures of her and had live audio of her with her son. Then, in order to dispatch with that liability, but also make it to make two birds with one stone, he brings he courts Demi Moore along with his partner, who his mob partner, who knows how wicked he is, but his hands are tied by the actual standing that Alec Baldwin has in that family of theirs, that where he's not appreciated by that family. That too, the younger son, who's a killer, the son of the mob boss, is also a killer and is not impressed with Alec Baldwin and his propensity to hurt innocent people, even them being from the mafia. But when they get there, his friend there is already under the influence of alcohol, and he's encouraging him with the alcohol and giving him more of alcohol before he then runs him off of a cliff in similar heinous way to make an impression on Demi Moore. But I just want to say that this thing about liquor is very similar to that, in that liquor is like these friends that you have some kind of chemistry with them, and then maybe people look at you a certain way. You might have had one or two cool experiences on alcohol. If you're honest in your whole life, you might have had one experience where you damn near about one with alcohol some way, but you didn't win because you still had that friend with you. Because anything that is connected to a liability is still a liability. So anything that you would have to do with sketchy friends is still something with sketchy friends, and they will take that back at one point. So I think that anything you get onto with alcohol in your life, as an example of a friend set, you you may be viable, but you're this person that's also friends with this thing, and that thing is more of this thing than you are, even with this thing. And it will take your family, it will take anything you have the same way as some friends will take something off of you. And then if you stay in a car, normally there's opportunity to get out. If you stay in this car long enough with these friends of yours, they're gonna drive you straight off a fucking cliff. So welcome to alcohol, baby. Someone said where I'm from. I'm from St. Paul.